Hey family, we're reading Martin Heidegger's Metaphysics, and he's a German philosopher, and I really like him very much, and he's super educational. So let's dig in and, upgrade our rhetoric. We need to show that and how, for the Greeks, appearing belongs to being, or more sharply stated, that and how being has its essence together with appearing. Okay, so for the Greeks, he's contending appearing is inherently linked to being, capital B being, and that being has a linked essence with appearing. Okay, so it belongs to it, inherently it appears, and also the essence of it. Okay, this was clarified through the highest possibility of human being. As the Greeks formed it, through glory and glorifying, glory means doxa. Ooh, okay. Doxeo means I show myself, I appear, I step into the light. Wow, that's Greek? Wow. Glory. So you see what's amazing? Okay, so Martin Heidegger's really wordy, right? He's a really wordy dude. But obviously we can see that has a point because look at the Greeks of their language. They have one word glory. And so their meaning of glory has like a threefold meaning: to show yourself, to say I appear, I step into the light. There's the I in there. When I think of how I grew up with the word glory, what it means in my context and from my background, glory would be a a vast demonstration of achievement where the honor is linked to you, right? That's how I look at glory. When someone says glory, it's like something that's vast and just magnificent and a large feat, right? Like a so, but the Greek term is like it seems instead of something so vast, it's like I has the individual in there. Wow, so this is interesting. What is experienced here, mainly in terms of vision and the visage, the respect in which someone stands. Oh, look, yeah, the respect in which someone stands, glory as something you stand in, and that glory is inherent with respect. Wow. Is grasped more in terms of hearing and calling, rufen, by the other word for glory, kleos. Glory is the repute roof in which one stands. Heraclitus says in fragment 29, and it has a bunch of the original Greek, for the noblest choose one thing above all others, glory, which constantly persists, in contrast to what dies. But the many are sated like cattle. Heraclitus, man. So essentially Heraclitus is saying if you're noble, you will choose glory above all else. And he claims that glory is wow. And that the common people who are not in the noble are more like cattle, livestock. Everyone likes to say that. Cattle, sheep, sheeple. It's very interesting. Maybe we all need to study the behavior of sheep more. But there is a restriction that pertains to all this, one that at the same time shows the state of affairs in its essential fullness. So the state of affairs in its essential fullness. Doxa is the respect and in which someone stands, and in a wider sense, the aspect ansehen that each being harbors and displays in its look. Asehen, eidos idea. A city offers a grand vista. He's going back and forth, it appears, between German and Greek. The view that a being has in itself, here we go. The view that being has in itself, and so first can offer from itself, let itself then be apprehended at this or that time, from this or that viewpoint. Wow. The vista that offers itself alters with each new viewpoint. That is kind of true, huh? If you have a tall vista, let's say you go there, you look from this angle, you go on the other side, you look from that angle, you have a wide range of what you're looking at from your viewpoint. That's true. Thus, this view is also one that we take and make for ourselves. So it's like uniquely, you like our perspective is unique based on our viewpoint, and we make it that way for ourselves. In experiencing and busying ourselves with begins, we constantly construct views for ourselves from their look. Look at that. That's like a psychological statement right there. We constantly construct views for ourselves from their look. So, from their look, their outer aesthetics, and our brain is constructing based on what we're perceiving. Yeah, so that's pretty legit, pretty common thing to know. This often happens without our looking closely at the thing itself. Ain't that the truth? Along some pathway or other, and on some ground or other, we arrive at a view about the thing. We construct an opinion for ourselves about it. Thus, it can happen that the view that we adopt has no support in the thing itself. Yep, of course, yes. You can definitely judge something, make an assumption about it, declare it, but you didn't really closely analyze the whole situation, right? You may have taken the general broad view and, oh, I looked at it for 3 seconds. This is my judgment, blah. But somebody who took the time and really looked at the details, looked at it, inspected it, asked some questions, is going to have a quite different view of the thing in itself and any property pertaining to it. It is then a mere view, an assumption, exactly. It is definitely that. We assume a thing to be thus or thus, then we are only opinioning, so putting our opinion on it. To assume or accept in Greek is dechestai. Accepting remains related to the offer of appearing. Doxa, as what is assumed to be thus or thus, is opinion. Oh. So we got the Greek word doxa here that he keeps using. I need to really write it down. We now reached our goal because being, phusis, another Greek word that he's focused on. So we got doxa and phusis. Phusis. I don't speak Greek, so I'm probably going to make mistakes in pronunciation. Consists in appearing. Okay, so being consists in appearing, and the Greek word for that is phusis. In the offering of a look and of views, it stands essentially, and thus necessarily and constantly. Okay, so the view and the look that said object offers through phusis stands essentially because of necessity and constancy. Okay. In the possibility of a look that precisely covers over and conceals what beings are in truth, that is, in unconcealment. This aspect in which beings now come to stand is seeming, in the sense of semblance. Okay, seeming, semblance. Our thesaurus skills are getting up-leveled with Heidegger. Wherever there is unconcealment of beings, there is the possibility of seeming. Wherever there is unconcealment of beings, the possibility of seeming arrives. And conversely, wherever beings stand in seeming and take a prolonged, insecure state, because it can break apart and fall away because you got more time to observe it, more time to see what's going on. And if it withstands the test of time of analyzation, then yeah, that's a good point, yes. The term doxa names various things. One, okay, let's remember this, doxa. And doxa was, what is assumed this? Where did he put it? Thethai, accepting release offer of appearing. So appearing and doxa. Okay, remember that. Various things. One, aspect or respect. As glory. Okay, doxa names various things. One of them is The aspect or respect concerning glory. Okay, so doxa and glory go hand in hand. Glory. 2. Aspect as the sheer view that something offers. 3. Aspect as merely looking so, seeming as mere semblance. 4. A view that a person constructs for himself, opinion. This multiple meaning of the word is not looseness of language, but a play with deep foundations in the mature wisdom of great language. Exactly. Language having layers to it. So some people can read one sentence and be like, you thought this out of just that one sentence? But as Heidegger points out, not every language is the same. We say we know this, but we don't really remember this. Some people say a word, and let's take a dictionary word, or let's say you pick a book out of the dictionary, right? That one word, you got multiple things that are, different definitions of it, right? And then you have synonyms that'll tell you other words that are very similar with similar meanings, but various in degrees, of similarity of that same word, to say it in another way. All of that is embedded in this one word, right? So if you have a sentence, someone can read only the surface of the words, while others can go deeper, and that can harm. Some people can read too much into something, and some people cannot read enough into something, a word or a sentence or a paragraph and such, right? That's what he's getting at here. A multiplicity that preserves the essential traits of being in the word. Yes, the multiplicity, multiple definitions, right? Preserving and essential traits. Yes. In order to see correctly from the very start here, we must guard ourselves against cavalry taking seeming as something just imaginary, subjective, justifying it. Aha, so he's saying, that's good. Just because something seems so, that doesn't mean it's inherently false or inherently subjective or inherently imaginary. Instead, just as appearing belongs to beings themselves, so does seeming. Let us think about the sun. It rises and sets for us daily. Only a very few astronomers, physicists, and philosophers directly experience this fact. Otherwise, as the movement of the earth around the sun, and even they do so only on the grounds of a particular, although rather widespread, conception, but the seeming in which sun and earth stand, for example, the early morning of a landscape, the sea in the evening, the night, is an appearing. This seeming is not nothing. Neither is it untrue, exactly, yeah. Neither is it a mere appearance of relationships that in nature are really otherwise. This seeming is historical, and it is history, uncovered, and grounded in poetry and saga, and thus an essential domain of our world. Poetry, a saga, seeming is not nothing, right? Seeming is not nothing. Because sometimes it depends on how you're using the word, right? Seeming. Because I can say, let's say somebody takes me to go look at a really nice car. So let's say I'm going to buy a car. And I go to the used car lot and I'm like, oh, this, Toyota Celica looks really good, but it has a real nice paint job. It seems, and it seems to look nice, so I assume it is nice. But then I get it home and it's a bucket, right? It falls apart, it's a lemon, we call it. So in our natural way of using the word seeming today, it usually means illusion, or like there's a connotation of it just seems, but it ain't the real deal. And what Heidegger is pointing out is that for the Greeks, at least, seeming doesn't inherently mean something false, like an illusion. That's why it's important to understand different languages, right? Because their cultural connotations and how they constructed their language is going to be something different than us, but we both can learn from each other. And the wise elders, these sort of philosophers, as he's mentioned, and those who, can understand it a little bit because of how they, witness and study how the earth and sun have their relationship, and how the people and the Greeks back then, like Heraclitus and others, really analyzed what being is through language and how language connects to the bigger picture. And wow, I mean, he's really connecting it all here. It's like connect, phusis, doxa. He really leads you in down this path, and then you got to kind of go back and be like, okay, I remember this, tie it to that. It's really interesting. Wow, he's really mixing the worlds here of literal examples, philosophical examples, and practical language examples to illustrate his points. Only all the effete latecomers, I don't know who they are. What is that? Effete latecomers. Oh, latecomers. Okay, yeah. With their overly clever wit, believe they can be done with the historical power of seeming by explaining it as subjective. So he's saying that the people who just are clever, witty with words, will explain away everything as subjective. So he's saying, like, you're late to the game of language. If you're just gonna say that everything is subjective, that's lazy mental work. Step in or step off. Where the essence of the subjectivity is something extremely dubious. Exactly. Remember when I gave you the example of the car example? It's like the way we use the word is something that is dubious, like, it only seems to be. But what he's pointing out is that the Greeks' experience of that word is quite different, and that's something we all have to remember. That's probably why he's spending so much time talking about Greek language. The Greeks experienced it otherwise. Time and again, they had first to tear being away from seeming and preserve it against seeming. Being essentially unfolds from an unconcealment. Only by undergoing the struggle between being and seeming did they wrest being forth from beings. Did they bring beings unconcealment, the gods and the state, the temples and the tragedies, athletic competition and philosophy, all this in the midst of seeming, besieged by it, but also taking it seriously, knowing its power. Only with the sophists and Plato was seeming explained as, and thus to, mere seeming. Ooh, he's giving a little smack to Plato there. He's grouping Plato in with the sophists. Plato wouldn't like that very much. At that same time, being as idea was elevated to a supersensory realm. Oh, okay. Being elevated to a supersensory realm. The chasm chorismos was torn open between the merely apparent beings here below and the real beings somewhere up there. Ah, he's talking about Plato's forms. Christian doctrine then established itself in this chasm. So Christianity taking from Platonism. I see what he's saying. While at the same time reinterpreting the below as the created and the above her, and with weapons thus reforged, it sets itself against antiquity as paganism and distorted it. And so Nietzsche is right to say that Christianity is Platonism for the people. I knew it! I knew that's where he was going. Yes! I love it when you're on the flow with the person writing and you don't know what's coming next and then they say it. Boom! So I love philosophy. In contrast, the great age of Greek Dasein is a unique, creative self-assertion. Your creative self-assertion amid the turmoil of the intertwined counterplay of the powers of being and seeming. Oh, that's a really long phrase. Let's repeat it. And it's self-asserted, and it'll still be self-asserted even if it's in turmoil, even if there's multiple interminglings, and even if there's counterplay, and that is all in relation to the powers of being and seeming. Wow, okay. For the originary essential connection between human Dasein, being as such, truth in the sense of unconcealment, and untruth as covering over. See Being and Time, section 44, section 68. Interesting. I need to read his Being and Time. I have it. I just haven't finished it. I need to finish reading it. Maybe after we finish this one, we'll read his Being and Time. like from the start. I'll restart from the start. I think I'm only like 1/4 of the way in the book, so I don't really starting. For the thinking of the early Greek thinkers, the unity and antagonism of being and seeming were powerful in an originary way. However, this was all portrayed at its highest and purest in Greek tragic poetry. I love Greek tragic poetry. Let us consider Sophocles' Oedipus Rex. Oedipus, who at the beginning is the savior and lord of the state, in the brilliance of glory and the grace of the gods, is hurled out of this seeming into the appearing, into the seeming is not just Oedipus's subjective view of himself, but that within which the appearing of his Dasein happens. In the end, he is unconcealed in his being as the murderer of his father and the defiler of his mother. The path from this beginning in brilliance to this end in horror is a unique struggle between seeming, concealment, and distortion, and unconcealment, being. That is deep. That is a perfect example. The city is besieged by what is concealed in the murder of the former king, Laos, with the passion of one who stands in the openness of brilliance, and who is Greek. Oedipus goes to unveil what is concealed. In doing so, he must step by step place himself into an unconcealment that in the end he can endure only by gouging out his own eyes, that is, by placing himself outside all light, letting the veil of night fall around him, and then by crying out, as a blind man, for all doors to be flung open, so that such a man may be revealed to the people as the man who he is. Cutting off certain things to reveal who you are. That's a perfect example. Perfect example of Sophocles' story to demonstrate his own point. Powerful use of analogy. But we should not see Oedipus only as the human being who meets his downfall. True. Yeah, it's not just that he failed, right? Or did something horrible with failure of his honor. But you still learn something from tragedy. That's why tragedy for me is a brilliant genre of writing. Because through others' failures, you can learn, right? Either be the example or be made of an example. We must grasp that form of Greek Dasein in which this Dasein's fundamental passion ventures into what is wildest and most far-flung, the passion for the unveiling of being. The passion for the unveiling of being. That is, the struggle over being itself. Holderlin, in the poem In Literatur Blau Blühet, I don't speak German, speaks this seer's word. Quote, King Oedipus has perhaps one eye too many. This eye too many is the fundamental condition for all great questioning and knowing, as well as their sole metaphysical ground. The knowledge and science of the Greeks are this passion. When today to serve the people, this is indeed a necessary and worthy demand, but it demands too little. And it does not demand what is authentic. The concealment will transform beings, for the openness of Dasein calls for more. In order to bring about a change in science, and this first means bringing about a change in originary knowing. Look at that. Bringing about a change in originary knowing. Our Dasein needs an entirely different metaphysical depth. It once again needs a fundamental relation to the being of beings as a whole, a relation that is well-founded and built truly. Wow. Well, I mean, that can be said of a lot of things. The connection between us today and everything that being, truth, and seeming means has been so confused and groundless and passionless for so long that even in our interpretation and appropriation of Greek poetry, we have an inkling of only a small portion of the power of this poetic saying in Greek Dasein itself. Yeah, you can say that's because, people don't really spend much time growing their brain in the philosophical mode of thought. So, yeah, of course, we are kind of turning into just little automatons. Just little automatons. So, we're not really using our God given gifts of thinking and reading, mostly of just pure entertainment. So, no wonder why people can't interpret the Greek Dasein and its poeticism. I mean, makes sense, right? We have Karl Reinhardt to thank for the latest interpretation of Sophocles, which comes essentially closer to Greek Dasein in being than all previous attempts, because Reinhardt sees and questions tragic happenings according to the fundamental connections among being, unconcealment, and seeming. Okay, so this man, Karl Reinhardt, who I guess he interpreted Sophocles' work in 1933, he is a very, Heidegger is claiming he understands Greek Dasein pretty well because of the fact that Reinhardt sees and questions tragic happenings, and he does so according to the fundamental connections among being and in relation to unconcealment and seeming. Okay. Even if modern subjectivisms and psychologisms still often interfere, Reinhardt's interpretation of Oedipus Rex as the tragedy of seeming is a magnificent achievement. Good point. Good point. We should read what he has to say about his interpretation. That's why it's good. You see? See, Heidegger himself is interpreting Oedipus's, Sophocles' tale, right? And now Heidegger is saying, look at that. This man, Karl Reinhardt, he has a pretty good, decent interpretation it's very, in essence, close to what the Greeks might have thought of this story, right? From what we have of the past that we can read from them. So not only is Heidegger showing the brilliance of Sophocles, but he's also giving credit to Karl Reinhardt, and in himself, Heidegger is writing his own interpretation. Again, that's pretty cool because he's giving credit to someone else and also demonstrating his own skills when it comes to, thinking about these bigger issues here. I will conclude this remark on the poetic formation of the struggle between being and seeming. A passage from Sophocles' Oedipus Rex that gives us the opportunity to establish the relation between our previous characterization of Greek being as constancy and our new characterization of being as appearing. Okay, so remember, there's one interpretation of being as, and now there's also being as an interpretation of appearing. Okay, so we got those two, constancy versus appearing, in relation to being. The few verses from the last choral passage of the tragedy, verses 11, 8, and 9 FF, runs as follows. Ooh, it has the original Greek here. Ooh, looks like interesting. Like the only letter I recognize in there is that it looks like the pi symbol. Who then, which man bears more controlled and fitting the sign than what suffices to stand in seeming? In order then, as one who seems to decline, namely from standing there straight in himself. Standing there straight in himself. Fortified. Who truly is in themselves and not just appearing to be so, but is seeming in the other sense of the word, as how Heidegger used it. In clarifying the essence of the infinitive, we spoke of certain words that display an enklesis, a declining gases. Now we see that seeming as a variant of being itself is the same as falling over. Wow, okay, so seeming now is a variant of being itself, and seeming is now a sort of falling over. It is a variant of being in the sense of standing there straight in itself. Both deviations from being are determined by being as the constancy of standing in the light, that is, of appearing. Yeah, you said that, but now you just reworded it a different way. It shows now, be clear, that seeming belongs to being itself as appearing. Okay, so seeming belongs to being, but being in itself. And that seeming, which belongs to being itself, is related to as appearing. Being as seeming is no less powerful than being as unconcealment. Okay, so, that's an interesting assertion. So, seeming as being is equal to being as unconcealment. So the seeming and the unconcealment as related to being are equal. Okay? Seeming happens in and with beings themselves. In and with. Seeming happens in and with beings themselves directly. But seeming not only lets beings appear as what they really are not. It not only distorts the being whose seeming it is. In all this, it also covers itself over as seeming, inasmuch as it shows itself as being. Yeah, okay. So seeming, it lets beings appear even as something, even if they're not that way, which, again, remember the car example. But it also can distort beings, okay? He's contending. And it can distort beings who are seeming as such, right? Also, he's contending that beings who are seeming have the ability to cover themselves in as much as it relates to being. Because seeming essentially distorts itself in covering over and distortion, we rightly say that appearances are deceiving. Exactly, yeah. You see what he did there? Yes. He is very good with words. Yes. This deception is part of seeming itself. Only because seeming itself deceives can it trick human beings and lead them into a delusion. Exactly. That's like the more modern interpretation of the way he's analyzing it. Yes. Once you read Heidegger, you push through his wordiness, you begin to kind of connect for where he's coming from. It may seem intimidating at first, but once you get into the flow of how Heidegger thinks, you can actually handle him pretty well. You just got to keep pushing through, and then you'll get the gist of where he's. Deception is only one of many modes in which human beings move in the interlocking triple world of being, unconcealment, and seeming. Self-deception. Now he's bringing in self-deception here. Notice this interlocking triple world of being. Wow. So seeming, unconcealment, being. The space, so to speak, that opens itself up in the interlocking of being, unconcealment, and seeming, I understand as errancy. Okay, errancy. This space, he's talking about a space that opens itself up. And it opens itself up into this interlockingness of being. And in this interlockingness of being, there is unconcealment and seeing contained within it. And this is related to errancy. He's going to go on, I believe. Seeming, deception, delusion, errancy stand in definite relations as regards their essences and their ways of happening, relations that have long been misinterpreted for us by psychology and epistemology, relations that we therefore, in our everyday Dasein, barely still experience and barely recognize with adequate perspicacity as powers. Yeah, that's fair. He's smacking epistemology, right? Misinterpreted for us by psychology. Tell me how you really feel, Heidegger. It was necessary first to make clear how, on the grounds of the Greek interpretation of beings as phusis, and only on these grounds, both truth in the sense of unconcealment and seeming as a definite mode of the arising self-showing belong necessarily to being. Wow. Okay, so it was the first how on the grounds of the Greek interpretation of being, remember, phusis. Okay. a sense of concealment, unconcealment, and seeming as a mode, a definite mode, of arising, self-showing, which belongs to being, and necessarily belongs to being. Wow. Heidegger's brilliant. Wow. I can see why he's focusing so much on the Greek interpretation, as I said. Standing there straight in himself. Wow. Okay, family. We did a lot of Heidegger today. I hope you liked it. I hope you can think more about being. You know, it's a very good thing to analyze epistemology. All right, family. I'll see y'all later.